Hey guys, today we're going to be reading My Dog Skip by Willie Morris. I'll be reading chapter 2. If you haven't seen chapter 1 yet, I'll link it in the description down below. Let's get started. So let me find chapter 2. Mutual Mischief. There was something in the very air of a small town in the deep south then, something spooked up and romantic, which did funny things to the imagination of its bright and resourceful boys. It had something to do with the long and heavy afternoons with nothing doing, with rich, slow evenings when the crickets scratched their legs and the frogs made murmuring music. With plain boredom, perhaps with an inherited tradition of making plots, we had to work our imaginations out on something, and less austere, the better. To this day, I have never doubted that old Skip understood all this better than any dog in history. As we grew older, he and I collaborated in other diverse ruses, one of them against a little boy named John Abner. My friend and I told him we would give him a quarter if he would walk alone, carrying a flashlight, at 9 o'clock one night, halfway through the spooky town cemetery, to the witch's grave, the resting place of the demon who had burned down the town in 1904, which was marked now with a heavy chain with one link missing where she had escaped. John Abner consented. Two of our conspirators promised to accompany him to the gates at 9 and send him alone up the road. At 8:30, Ellis Elias, nicknamed Strawberry, and Skip and I went to the cemetery. It was a still, moonlit night in early June. The night of the sun was just going out on the horizon, giving the evening an eerie glow before the coming of the dark. Strawberry stationed himself 10 yards from the witch's grave. With a clump of bushes, he had a long stick with white pillowcases attached to the end. I only had my silver trumpet, which I was just learning to play in the junior band, and I hid behind some trees on the opposite side. Skip crouched there next to me. As we waited for our victim, I noticed a man walking up the road about 50 yards away, taking a shortcut to Brickyard Hill. I signaled to Strawberry to wait and took out my trumpet. Pressed the valves halfway down, I played a long, ghastly moaning wail, as loud as the horn could blow. With that, Skip's ears fluttered, and then he let loose with a shrill, terrifying howl, as if he were baying at the moon. The man gave a little hop, skip, and jump, listened again, and then took off at a steady gait up into the woods. While we doubled over and all but rolled on the ground with joy, then we returned to our post. I had brought with me a pair of lengthy cotton strings and a cardboard replica of a skeleton I had bought at the nickel and dime store. I proceeded to tie the grotesque ghoul on Skip's back. Soon we heard the faint sound of footsteps on the gravel, and there was John Abner, a frightened little boy walking steadily through the trees, looking all around and flashing his light in every direction. When he got within a few steps of the witch's grave, Strawberry all of a sudden held the stick out from the bushes and waved the pillowcases. Then I blew a solemn high note on my trumpet and descended to the same moan I had used on the man taking the shortcut. With that, I pushed Skip out from under the tree. Since he knew the poor victim and recognized him, he rushed impotently toward him. When we looked out, all we could see was a wisp of dust on the road, and we heard the sound of small feet moving fast. Skip with his skeleton in torrid pursuit, old Skip with us. That Halloween night, several of us went out to Pee-wee's father's pastures, not far from our school building, to fetch a cow. We knew our school teachers would be rehearsing their faculty play shortly after dark on that evening, and we surreptitiously led the cow down one of the town's alleyways, onto the school grounds, and through the back door of the auditorium. We tied the rope of the cow's neck on a seat on the aisle, leaving it a good amount of slack to roam around. As we were accomplishing this, I noticed Skip sitting on his haunches, staring inquisitively at the cow. And the cow staring right back at him. Skip glanced at me. "What manner of creature is this?" he seemed to be saying. I believe he perceived we were involved in something of immense consequence. We retired some of the hedges near the auditorium windows as darkness fell. From the streets, we saw the football coach emerge from his pickup truck and walk toward the auditorium, entering it through the front door. We know it was the coach We knew it was the football coach's responsibility to turn on the lights before the other teachers arrived. We snuck up to one of the windows and looked inside, barely able to make out the silhouette of the coach groping his way down the aisle in the darkness. When he bumped into the cow's horn, he emitted a terrorized shriek of such acoustical dimensions that even Skip began to bark, and we all got out of there fast. When my comrades and I were 13 years old, and Skip 3, we ascertained the house where some of the women held their Wednesday afternoon prayer meetings. One morning, following the cookbook, we baked 24 oatmeal cookies in our kitchen, using every single ingredient as the book said. And then, for good measure, we added a mixture of castor oil, dill pickle juice, and milk of magnesia. What else? Henji asked. I looked down at Skip, who had been following our activities with his usual intense attachment. Then I glanced at the bottom of the shelf of the kitchen cabinet and saw his warm medicine for dogs, flea and tick powder, and ear ointment. Using the egg batter, we put these all into our mixture. When the cookies were cool, we gift wrapped them and pasted on a card that read, "To the ladies from all the people in town." Then we crept through the side through the bushes to Sister Craig's house and placed the gift inside the screen door. Later, we peered through the window of Sister Craig, served the cookies. I propped Skip's head near the ledge so he could watch too. The first guest who bit into the oatmeal cookies chewed on it for a moment. Her jaws worked politely but with purpose, then spit with such energy that the crumbs landed at 0.6 feet away, spraying 3 other guests with an awful stuff. Skip followed this with interest, and then we all slipped happily away. I never knew a dog who cared so passionately for nonsense, especially when he felt he was part of it. At night when I lay in bed reading, old Skip would crawl up to me and look at the book, sometimes touching it with his paw. He always wanted to know what I was doing. You want to read some Dickens? I might ask. When I turned out the light, he would sleep curled up in the bend of my legs. When it was cold, he would root around and scratch me to get under the covers. First thing in the morning, after he had gone outside for a solitary run, he would bound back to my bed and try to roast me out with his cold nose. If this did not work, he would lightly bite my toes beneath the blanket. After we both had breakfast of Raisin Bran and milk, he would walk me towards school. The school building was only 6 blocks down the boulevard from our house, and along the way, Henji would join us, then Bubba, then Rivers Applewhite. Every morning, the same spot, a few yards or so from Rivers' front porch, at the street corner near the bayou. He would stop and sit, watching us from afar as we crossed the bridge to the school grounds. Then he would turn around and go home. Every afternoon after school, he would be at the precise place waiting for me. We would retrace our journey home again, where I would make us both mayonnaise and ketchup sandwiches before we commenced our late afternoon rituals. Of these many exercises, one involved my throwing sticks for him. He was the best retriever I ever had. I would throw a stick as far as I could across the alley behind our house, perhaps, or into the deepest recesses of the neighborhood's backyards, and then hid in the shrubs or under the house in the green DeSoto parked in the driveway. Skip would come tearing around with a stick in his mouth and, not finding me where I had been when I threw the stick, would drop it and look everywhere. If he found me under the house, he would crawl in there and lick my nose as if to suggest I was not as smart as I thought I was. Or he would jump onto the hood of the car, or even go into the house to see if I was there. His game backfired one day. I'm not saying Skip was all perfect, for who wants a perfect dog? Bubba and I threw a stick for him far into Miss Graber's yard, and then climbed the elm tree in the back of my house, hiding far up the branches among the leaves. It took him half an hour to find us. We watched with superior smirks and stifled laughter as he dropped the stick and roamed everywhere in his search looking for us, looking at the top of the garage, inside the tool shed, and in the gullies abutted the alley, even going through Miss Gabber's back porch and into her wisteria vines in his quest. When he finally located us in the tree, he became extremely angry. He refused to let us out of the tree. Every time one of us descended, he snapped at our feet with his long white teeth. We sought to soothe him with a saging talk. "You're a good boy, Skip," or "How would you like some Raisin Bran?" But we might just as well have been courting Hitler or Tojo or Mussolini. Since no one was around to come to our rescue, we were trapped up there for over 2 hours until Skip got tired and dozed asleep. We missed the biggest club Scott baseball game of the season. I have mentioned his high school regard for Raisin Bran. I have never seen a dog with such haunting distaste for dog food of all kinds, which he never once touched after his day as a puppy. He can put a can of Red Heart on his platter, and he would treat it with the disdain of pardon it from the most sublime of plantains. Plantainets, sorry. His preferences were otherwise highly eclectic and include the mayonnaise and ketchup sandwiches we ate after school, fried chicken livers, squirrel dumplings, parched peanuts, potato chips, moon pies, ham hocks, chicken gizzards, cotton candy, and rice and gravy. His favorite foods, however, was sliced bologna. After a time, we devised an established procedure with my black friend Bozo. He worked behind the meat counter at Goodall's grocery store down the street. I made a small leather pouch and attached it to Skip's collar. I would say, "Skip, go down to Bozo and get yourself a pound of bologna." Then I would put a quarter in the leather pouch, and Skip would take off down the sidewalk for the store and bring a package back in his mouth. With Bozo's change in the pouch, Bozo enjoyed entertaining his friends with the exercise. They would be standing around talking baseball or football or some such, and when Bozo heard Skip scratch the front screen door, he would open the door with a sweeping deferential flourish, and then tell his companions, "Here's old Skip shopping for a pound of his favorite stuff," and with another great gesture would negotiate the transaction. There was a parallel to this. When Bozo opened the leather pouch and found only a nickel, he knew Skip had been dispatched by my father to get the Jackson newspaper. Bozo would roll up the newspaper with a rubber band, and Skip would return home with it in his mouth. One day, however, he came back with the Memphis newspaper. Daddy subscribed regularly to the Memphis paper, and he was exceedingly upset. He severely admonished Skip, then ordered him to go take the paper back and to return with the right one. Skip appeared a few minutes later with the Memphis paper again. In the pouch, I found a note from Bozo. "It ain't the dog's fault. We ran out of Jackson papers. My father felt so guilty he gave Skip 4 fried chicken livers." In one of those early summers, I entered Skip in a local dog contest, a highly regarded event sponsored by the United Daughters of Confederacy. About 500 people were in the audience, and since the prize was to be based on good looks and on tricks the dog could perform, I felt certain Skip would win. 52 dogs were to participate in the competition. Skip was the 35th on the program. And when he was announced, I led him onto the stage of the auditorium because he was a well-known presence in town. Everyone generously applauded. Then a polite silence fell as they got him to walk around the stage 2 or 3 times so the judges could examine his posture and the way he carried himself. Now, it was time for the tricks. "Sit down," I commanded, but Skip had an ordinary look in his eyes and would not sit down. Instead, he jumped up and barked, "Lie down, roll over." This time, he sat down and shook his hands. "Play dead." To this, he leapt off the stage, ran up the aisle, turned around, leapt onto the stage again. The spectators began to laugh, and I was growing more and more embarrassed the minute. "Sit down," I repeated. He rolled over twice and then stretched out contrarily on his back and with all 4 feet sticking up in the air. When he finally got up, I reached for the tennis ball in my pocket and said, "Make a catch." I tossed the ball in the air toward him. Ordinarily, he would have caught such a mundane throw in his mouth with no effort at all, but he let the ball go right by him, conjuring for me in the unsettling instant my readings about the Chicago Black Sox, who threw the 1919 World Series. I've never seen him so difficult. I led him backstage and told him he made a fool of me. Only later I did comprehend that he did not care about winning trophies and considered the performance of public tricks beneath his dignity. But when the prizes were announced, he tied for first place with Sheriff Rain's big bulldog and a handsome dog named Buck with an impressive brown and white forehead, although he slobbered a lot. Super Dupe, the Hendricks Black Labrador, finished a few points behind Skip and Buck. The judges said they were not impressed with Skip's discipline, but they gave him a prize because he was such a fine-looking dog. An appropriate time, I forgave him in his irascibility before the judges, and many years the blue ribbon with shiny medal attached to it hung proudly on the wall of my bedroom. Not long after this, when I turned 12 and joined Troop 72 of Boy Scouts and began working on merit badges, I discovered that not a single member of the town troop had dog care. This was hard to fathom, yet true. Numerous of local boys had earned such unusual merit badges as sheep farming, pigeon raising, poultry study, reptile study, bird study, and pulp and paper. And the smartest older boy in the troop, named JC, offspring of our dentist, Doc Shirley, not only had acquired all these, but also possessed the most arduous merit badge of all, called signaling, which embraces Morse code, ship codes, and flags, despite the fact we lived 500 miles at every least from the nearest ocean. But even the most diligent of boys did not have dog care, with such a distinctive companionship as Old Skip. I was determined to set a historical precedent, but I needed to have my certificate of authority approved by a practicing veterinarian. I telephoned the town vet named Dr. Cornelius Jones to make an appointment. Explained to him my mission, I asked if I should bring my dog with me, and he said that he did not deem that necessary. His offices were in the dark old stone building on Washington Street, covered with lush green ivy and the smells inside of medicines and anticipates of animal were pungent and not disagreeable. Since I've never been asked to do this before, he said, I'll just ask you some questions about your dog. What's his name? Skip. He queried me about age, weight, breed, habitudes, and training, and then asked, what about fleas? What about him, sir? I replied. Does your dog have fleas? He's got plenty. Yes, sir. How do you get rid of that? How do you get rid of fleas? Well, I pick them off one by one and throw them on top of the heater. This apparently discouraged the doctor. He started in on another line of questioning. Do you consider your dog intelligent? Yes, sir. He's the smartest dog in the world who ever lived. Really? What can he do? I told him that he could drive a car with a little help and picked up his own bologna at Goodloe's grocery. Also, that he played football. Once more, he gave me a disbelieving glance. Do you feed him a good diet? Yes, sir. I sure do. How many times a day do you feed him? Oh, I guess about 7 or 8. 7 or 8, the doctor said. Don't you know you're supposed to only feed a dog once a day? Then, shaking his head, he signed my certificate, making me the first in the country to get dog care. And that is the end of chapter 2. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Give this video a like, be sure to subscribe down below, and stay tuned for chapter 3.